"Wet," replied the boy. "Very wet. I've always said when it has rained hard that it was like the night I came. And they used to crowd round and laugh to see me cry when the rain fell heavily. It was like a child, they said, and that made me think of it more. I turned cold all over sometimes, for I could see myself as I was then, coming in at the very same door." "As you were then?" repeated Nicholas, with assumed carelessness. "How was that?" "Such a little creature," said Smike, "that they might have had pity and mercy upon me, only to remember it." "You didn't find your way there alone?" remarked Nicholas. "No," rejoined Smike. "Oh, no." "Who was with you?" "A man, a dark, withered man. I've heard them say so at the school, and I remembered that before. I was glad to leave him. I was afraid of him, but they made me more afraid of them, and used me harder too." "Look at me," said Nicholas, wishing to attract his full attention. "There, don't turn away. Do you remember no woman, no kind woman, who hung over you once, and kissed your lips, and called you her child?" "No," said the poor creature, shaking his head. "No, never." "Nor any house but that house in Yorkshire?" "No," rejoined the youth, with a melancholy look. "A room. I remember I slept in a room, a large lonesome room at the top of a house, where there was a trap door in the ceiling. I've covered my head with the clothes often, not to see it, for it frightened me. A young child with no one near at night, and I used to wonder what was on the other side. There was a clock too, an old clock in one corner. I remember that. I have never forgotten that room, for when I have terrible dreams it comes back just as it was. I see things and people in it that I'd never seen then, but there is the room just as it used to be. That never changes." "Will you let me take the bundle now?" asked Nicholas, abruptly changing the theme. "No," said Smike. "No. Come, let us walk on." He quickened his pace as he said this, apparently under the impression that they had been standing still during the whole of the previous dialogue. Nicholas marked him closely, and every word of this conversation remained upon his memory. It was by this time within an hour of noon, and although a dense vapour still enveloped the city they had left, as if the very breath of its busy people hung over their schemes of gain and profit, and found greater attraction there than in the quiet region above, in the open country it was clear and fair. Occasionally, in some low spots, they came upon patches of mist, which the sun had not yet driven from their strongholds, but these were soon past, and as they laboured up the hills beyond, it was pleasant to look down and see how the sluggish mass rolled heavily off before the cheering influence of day. A broad, fine, honest sun lighted up the green pastures and dimpled water with a semblance of summer, while it left the travellers all the invigorating freshness of that early time of year. The ground seemed elastic under their feet. The sheep bells were music to their ears, and exhilarated by exercise and stimulated by hope, they pushed onward with the strength of lions. The day wore on, and all these bright colours subsided and assumed a quieter tint, like young hopes softened down by time, or youthful features by degrees resolving into the calm and serenity of age. But they were scarcely less beautiful in their slow decline than they had been in their prime, for nature gives to every time and season some beauties of its own, and from morning to night, as from the cradle to the grave, is but a succession of changes so gentle and easy that we can scarcely mark their progress. To Godalming they came at last, and here they bargained for 2 humble beds, and slept soundly. In the morning they were astir, though not quite so early as the sun, and again afoot, if not with all the freshness of yesterday, still with enough of hope and spirit to bear them cheerily on. It was a harder day's journey than yesterday's, for there were long and weary hills to climb, and in journeys, as in life, it is a great deal easier to go downhill than up. However, they kept on with unabated perseverance, and the hill has not yet lifted its face to heaven that perseverance will not gain the summit of at last. They walked upon the rim of the Devil's Punch Bowl, and Smike listened with greedy interest as Nicholas read the inscription upon the stone, which, reared upon that wild spot, tells of a murder committed there by night. The grass on which they stood had once been dyed with gore, and the blood of the murdered man had run down drop by drop into the hollow which gives the place its name. The Devil's Bowl, thought Nicholas as he looked into the void, never held fitter liquor than that. Onward they kept with steady purpose, and entered at length upon a wide and spacious tract of downs, with every variety of little hill and plain to change their verdant surface. Here there shot up almost perpendicularly into the sky a height so steep as to be hardly accessible to any but the sheep and goats that fed upon its sides, and there stood a mound of green, sloping and tapering off so delicately, and merging so gently into the level ground, that you could scarce define its limits. Hills swelling above each other, and undulations shapely and uncouth, smooth and rugged, graceful and grotesque, thrown negligently side by side, bounded the view in each direction; while frequently, with unexpected noise, there arose from the ground a flight of crows, who, cawing and wheeling round the nearest hills, as if uncertain of their course, suddenly poised themselves upon the wing, and skimmed down the long vista of some opening valley with the speed of light itself. By degrees the prospect receded more and more on either hand, and as they had been shut out from rich and extensive scenery, so they emerged once again upon the open country. The knowledge that they were drawing near their place of destination gave them fresh courage to proceed, but the way had been difficult, and they had loitered on the road, and Smike was tired. Thus twilight had already closed in when they turned off the path to the door of a roadside inn, yet 12 miles short of Portsmouth. 12 miles, said Nicholas, leaning with both hands on his stick, and looking doubtfully at Smike. 12 long miles, repeated the landlord. Is it a good road? Inquired Nicholas. Very bad, said the landlord, as of course, being a landlord, he would say. I want to get on, observed Nicholas, hesitating. I scarcely know what to do. Don't let me influence you, rejoined the landlord. I wouldn't go on if it was me. Wouldn't you? asked Nicholas, with the same uncertainty. Not if I knew when I was well off, said the landlord. And having said it, he pulled up his apron, put his hands into his pockets, and, taking a step or two outside the door, looked down the dark road with an assumption of great indifference. A glance at the toil-worn face of Smike determined Nicholas, so without any further consideration he made up his mind to stay where he was. The landlord led them into the kitchen, and as there was a good fire, he remarked that it was very cold. If there had happened to be a bad one, he would have observed that it was very warm. What can you give us for supper? Was Nicholas's natural question. Why, what would you like? Was the landlord's no less natural answer. Nicholas suggested cold meat, but there was no cold meat. Poached eggs, but there were no eggs. Mutton chops, but there wasn't a mutton chop within 3 miles, though there had been more last week than they knew what to do with, and would be an extraordinary supply the day after tomorrow. Then, said Nicholas, I must leave it entirely to you, as I would have done at first if you had allowed me. Why, then, I'll tell you what, rejoined the landlord. There's a gentleman in the parlour that's ordered a hot beefsteak pudding and potatoes at 9. There's more of it than he can manage, and I've very little doubt that if I ask leave, you can sup with him. I'll do that in a minute. No, no, said Nicholas, detaining him. I would rather not. At least, why cannot I speak out? Here, you see that I am travelling in a very humble manner, and have made my way hither on foot. It is more than probable, I think, that the gentleman may not relish my company, and although I am the dusty figure you see, I am too proud to thrust myself into his.' 'Lord love you!'